Critics of the Texas public education system have long pointed out the inequality of funding for school districts, especially in predominantly minority communities. How can you ensure that students in all districts are receiving a quality education without necessarily throwing more money at the problem? And so, according to our plan here, we're going to have Mr. White answer that question first for 45 seconds.
Yeah, our own Supreme Court of Texas has found that our schools are barely constitutional. We're failing our children right now with their education. And I know your question was, how do you fix it without throwing money at it? I'm going to fix it also by throwing money at it, because it needs money. The state's getting out of the education business. The state used to fund 50% of education. Today they fund 38%. That's been on the backs of our property taxes, right? And the property taxes can't keep going up and up. The state has to show back up. We need to stop spending money on border security and spend it on education. We need to close a property tax loophole that only benefits commercial property owners and spend that on education as well. This problem takes money, and the money's there, but the leadership is spending the money in other things on their extremist social agendas with border securities and bathrooms and sanctuary cities, etc. I'll pass the question on.
Thank you. Again, you'll have 30 seconds again later to look at that some more. Our second person providing an answer is going to be Mr. Osaguda at podium 5. 45 seconds.
Right. I think the issue is that, and I talk about this on my website, as a traditional production function, we have very diverse students who are trying to get through a system and then all have a look uniform on the other end. Traditionally, historically, minority groups are also socially economically depressed. We don't have necessarily educational attainment of parents, so it may actually require more resources to educate folks that are minorities or people who are in socially economic areas that require more support. The question is, how are you going to fund it? And I think it may be an issue where you need to reassess funding, but to me, you have to look at that as a structural change. And so my correlation for that, or my proposal for that, I'll address in my 30-second follow-up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Osaguda. All right, and then our next answer is going to come from Mr. Payne at podium 2.
Yes, your question specifically spoke about the low economic areas. You can't do it without funding. So we need to find additional funding sources, additional revenue sources. And the way we do that is, like Andrew said, we need to close the loopholes on large corporations who are not paying their fair taxes. That's anywhere from $5 to $6 billion a year that we're losing. Put that into education. We also need to look at our current lottery system, where 50% of our lottery system is actually supposed to go towards education. They put it in, but guess what they do at the bottom? They take it out. So we also need to look at legalizing medical and recreational marijuana, and then actually the taxes and the revenue from that actually is put into education fully, and we don't take it out at the bottom like we currently do with the casino, with the lottery. But speaking of casinos, I do believe we need to look at our gaming industry, because we are actually losing billions of dollars to New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. Bring it right here in Texas. It creates jobs as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then our last answer is going to come from Mr. Davis here at podium number 1.
Okay, how do you fix it without increasing the money? Well, like everyone said, the money is there. It's just they spend it on debt. They shift that money from education to debt, so debt becomes more important than taking care of the students' needs and educating them. Second of all, we need to raise the lottery 3%, from 27% to 3%. That's $158 million a year. 1% on the tax. If we close the loophole on corporations, create $498 million a year. Added onto that $1.2 billion that we already get, we got almost $3 billion a year. That'll fix the education system where we don't have to depend on property tax from richer cities. That way, lower income areas will have the necessary fund.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right, now we're going to go back to the top of our order. Each candidate is going to have another 30 seconds to kind of give some more analysis on this very same question. So we're going to return to Mr. White and let you continue with your analysis of education for 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. We've talked about the money that's involved, but a great education starts with a great teacher. My wife was a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. My aunt and my sister are all teachers, right? Today in Texas, we pay our teachers $5,000 below the national average. So we expect teachers to go to college, get a school loan, and teach. And how are they going to pay off that loan if we're not paying even the market rate in the nation, right? So we have to start with that. I'm proposing a $5,000 pay increase, and we're going to pay for it by closing the loopholes, right? So we can do that without raising taxes. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And now, Mr. Osaguda, you have 30 seconds as well.
All right, going to go fast. The loophole that they're talking about is based in the Constitution. It's equal and uniform tax code. In order to do that, you're going to need a constitutional amendment. So the timing on this is not going to be immediate. It's going to take some time. In addition, I think we should look at maybe getting rid of the lottery. And again, the thing, if you're going to try to tax gambling, again, which populations are you trying to tax? You are trying to tax populations that are already socially, economically disadvantaged. This is a regressive tax for the lowest people in our society. This is why I say half-baked ideas. We cannot afford to do this any longer. Major structural tax reform is what's needed. We cannot do these harebrained ideas.
All right, thank you, Mr. Osaguda. Let's hear from Mr. Payne, another 30 seconds on this topic.
Casinos are not harebrained ideas. Ask Oklahoma, Louisiana, and New Mexico. It's going to take more to fix our educational system than just giving teachers a pay raise. I can give Governor Abbott a pay raise, doesn't mean he's going to do any better. We actually have to look at the entire structure of how we are educating our children, and that includes the STAR test as well. We need to retweak and rework the STAR test. Right now it's used as a form of punishment, and the STAR test should be something, or any testing we do for our child, should be done so that it is a positive reinforcement on their education. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Payne, thank you. Mr. Davis, 30 seconds for you.
Well, as an educator myself, we need to focus more on VOTEC and PTEC. PTEC is where the school systems are now working with private corporations. So when these students are in high schools, these companies are putting the money there to actually certify and train those students. So when they come out of high school, they have a job, high-paying job. And then second of all, we should not scrap the lottery, because we scrap the lottery, we now have to find another funding source. So that you just made education go down, and now we're going to have to try to tax or raise property taxes so we can make up the balance.